Hi, and welcome to another Repaint video. I'm Hannah from Hoodles, and I hope you're not fed up with Christmas yet. This was a small project, although it turned rather chaotic while chopping up the body. I still consider it small. Since last Christmas, I wanted to make an elf on a shelf, and I'm still late posting. How is that possible? Oh well, a super delayed happy holiday to you. 2021 was insane. I'll admit I lost it a couple of times, but if I think about it, it has taught me a lot about kindness and the importance of being there for each other. I know I'm late on the bandwagon, but you know, better late than never. So this is my take on the mischievous little elf. The custom has only recently reached Sweden on a very small scale, and it's not as elaborate as in the US, but the concept is so cute, so I couldn't help myself. Do you have an elf on a shelf at home during Christmas or some other version of it? I am curious to know. I took the opportunity to use this broken Draculara. The head was loose on the neck, it couldn't really hold itself up, so I exchanged it for this horrible experiment head. It's good to have a scrap one to try stupid artsy things on. I start by heating the head up with my blow dryer before pulling the head off, praying the neck peg doesn't break, and it didn't. Huzzah! Then I scraped out the hair from the inside of the experiment head, followed by making an incision and taking out the hair. There was so much sticky glue and it was really disgusting. Next, I removed the paint with pure acetone. I've tried painting with different kinds of nail polish in this one, but none of them left any discoloration. The head was, however, a bit yellowed on some spots, which I later fixed during the face-up. I had to test and see if the head would fit the body. Usually the heads are pretty soft and squishy, but this one was hard like I had shrunk it. It did, however, fit, and I could remove it again and spray it with MBC before the face-up. But first I made the body. This was super chaotic and I was in doubt from start to finish, but all was well in the end. I chopped it into pieces with my Dremel and I broke some discs during the process, which always scares the living daylight out of me. My goal was a movable joint with metal wire in the knees, elbows and spine. This is the puzzle so far. I ended up cutting off a triangle in the neck and using hot glue to straighten it. Monster High dolls are not known for their great posture. Then I drilled holes in the limbs for the metal wire. I first used this thicker wire for the knee joints, but it broke after the doll was finished, so I had to perform some knee surgery and replace it with smaller braided wires instead. I've never done anything like this before, so some trials and errors were going on. I bent the end of the wires to make hoops and then glue them in place. Here are the hip joints where I use straws to sew them on later. The spine is made out of 3 braided metal wires. It makes it sturdy and durable as opposed to a single one. Then I hot glued it in place. This time I did the same thing for the elbows, but with a thinner wire. Then I cleaned up the joints and covered them with stuffing to fill out. I couldn't make a pattern, so instead I clamped red velvet fabric directly onto the leg with the right side in, then I gently pulled it off, so the seam, turned it right side out and dressed the pieces. I did this to all of them, legs, arms and the torso. I was debating how to make the mittens. First I tried sewing, but it just looked really clumsy, so instead I used plastic covered wire and glued white fluffy fabric after shaping them. It was a really simple but neat solution. Before attaching the limbs, I hand sewed and closed the fabric on the pieces, then I chose white buttons for the shoulder and hip joints. The needle was almost too short to be able to pull through, but with pliers and perseverance and some curse words, I managed. Still, at this point, I was doubting everything, but then I added white faux fur and was like, doesn't look that bad. So I continued and did the same to the shoulders. I glued the mittens on and added more faux fur, then I brushed it to fluff it out and remove residue glue. I also glued snowflakes along the edges to hide any roughness, plus it looks super cute and wintry. I also added decorative buttons. I know I've deviated from the original elf on a shelf at this point, but I like doing my take on things. While that dries, I occupied myself with a face-up. First I used red pastels to make some light wintry blushing. I only blushed the lips. The soft look, I think it's so pretty. Next I used my red watercolor pencil to draw a happier smile. I mean, it's a Christmas doll and Christmas makes most people happy. Usually I draw the lines before blushing since it's hard to partially erase pastels without creating harsh lines, but this time I didn't. It had been a while since I made a face up when I made this one, so I was a bit out of touch. The previous nail polish paint might have affected the head because it was like drawing on paper, which was quite neat. The colors became opaque really fast. The good thing is it doesn't take that many layers to get a nice color, but there is a risk of scraping it off if not careful with the watercolor pencils, which I did because I wasn't careful, so heads up. To create the eyebrows, I smoosh on pastels in a rough shape and then erase the edges into something that looks planned. Then more pastels before the second layer. Here I start by enhancing everything from the first one. I almost didn't use my black watercolor pencil at all. The pupil stayed dark brown because I wanted it to look soft and cozy. I'm using my white pencil to highlight some parts, then my brown followed by white to make hair strands on the eyebrows. Here is the only time I used my black pencil, and that was to define the lashes and the outline of the eye. Then some red before giving her freckles. I usually use pastels mixed with water to make the freckles. It's so easy to erase if it becomes too much. I paint them onto the face and dab with my finger. I shade the eyes with dark blue pastels before adding blue veins on the temples and below the eyes. I blush the lips more before setting with MSC and moving on to the next layer. Again, I enhanced what I did on the previous one, but I also worked a lot on highlighting to bring out the details. Finally, it's time for acrylics! My favorite part. Honestly, this is when it comes to life. I tried out a nail art pencil that wasn't good enough, so I returned to my 20 divided by 0. And of course, I couldn't help myself using glitter glue, and as a last minute decision, I add a little on the nose too, just for the sparkles. Then I used a toothpick to poke it around and make it more detailed. To prepare for the hair, I painted the scalp with acrylics, and I wonder how many layers of MSC this pencil is covered in. This is pretty disgusting. As usual, I made hair wefts from yarn, very straightforward procedure. Cut, tie, brush, flatten, cut, glue and peel. Time to recapitate her before giving her some hair. I started to get some hope at this point. I glue the wefts and give her a side parting. The last weft gets folded over and heat set with the iron on medium heat. Then I can brush it out, get horrified by the rough edges and try to smoothen them out by cutting it along the strands. I am no hairdresser and I have no idea what I'm doing, but it kind of works. Or I think so. It makes a difference. The final thing she needs is a little hat. I sewed the cone shape using the same fabric, measured her head and made a pattern. Then I used more clamps to glue the fringe onto it. It wasn't sufficient, so I ended up hand sewing. The fringe also needed a haircut, so to the salon! Much better. Now there's only one thing left. It needed a tassel in the end, so I made one out of brushed yarn and pulled it through before gluing it in place. And there we go. With this, she's complete. I always enjoy Christmas, and I'm a little bit sad I am this late with this video, but I'm glad I managed to publish it. I am partially done with the wheelbarrow doll for my Monopoly series, but something is missing. I go to my crafting room and stare at it at least 2 times a day, wondering. I'd love to reach out to the Hive Mind, which is you all, but it's supposed to be a sneaky project, so I can't. I would be forever grateful though if you could name drop things that would go with the wheelbarrow theme in a comment below. That would be awesome, and I would be so grateful. So I started with this mess of a doll and it ended up with this. I am so happy with her, she's almost exactly what I imagined. My favorite thing is probably the maroon colored velvet and her face up. Making her was super fun and challenging, and yeah, well, I learned a lot on the way. I hope you enjoyed watching the process. Happy late New Year. May 2022 be whatever you need it to be. Until next time. Bye!